Sheffield. I'm Monica, and I'm here today with Paul Adam, who's written 16 novels, including 3 for children. He's Sheffield-based, and today we're going to talk about his documentary. So, hi, how are you today?
Hello, I'm fine, thank you.
Great.
Very nice to be here.
Great. Should we crack on with the questions then?
Sure, absolutely, yeah.
Okay, so number one, I just wanted to ask, so you're launching this documentary tomorrow.
Yep.
So it's Quiet Flows in the Dawn. Sounds very exciting. Why did you decide to make this documentary to begin with?
Well, I wanted to make a documentary. As you say, I've been writing novels most of my working life and screenplays, and you get to a point where you things don't happen because you can write scripts and then they can't get the money, and they can't get a production off the ground. So you do get to a point where you think, well, I can just do this myself. If I could do it cheaply, I can shoot it myself and I can kind of do the interviews myself. So what is manageable and what interests me? And I was interested, I live in Sheffield, I grew up here, so I've always been interested in the industrial history of Sheffield, which is very interesting. And I thought, well, why don't I go up to the source of the Don and come all the way down the river to its mouth? Because I didn't think anybody had done that before. And I thought, well, that will give me some interesting landmarks along the way to when I can meet people and talk about what they do and look at it. And in the course of that, I kind of found that there was a huge environmental sort of transformation going on the Don. From being a very dirty river, it kind of regenerated, cleaned up to the extent that they've now got a lot of fish back in, and they're hoping to get salmon back into the centre of Sheffield for the first time in 200 years, which would be absolutely unbelievable when it happens. Yeah.
Salmon would survive here.
Oh, absolutely. The water's clean enough. The problem for the salmon with the River Don, because the River Don, in its history, the way it was used as a source of power for the steel mills and for the grinding mills and the forgers. So what they did was they broke the river up with weirs to divert water into dams, and the dams then powered the water wheels for the industrial processes. The problem for the salmon, who of course migrate from the sea and come up to their spawning grounds, is they can't get over the weirs, they're too high. So what has been happening over the last probably 20, 30 years is they have been installing fish passers on all those nearly all of those weirs, so that the salmon, when they come up from the coast, they can go up the fish pass, they don't have to go up the weir. Now there are only 2 weirs left now between Sheffield and the sea that don't have a fish pass on, and they've got the money for doing it, but they haven't actually got round to sort of doing it yet. So once those weirs have a fish pass on, there's no reason why the salmon can't get all the way up to the centre of Sheffield, which would be great.
Oh, that's so interesting. That's so interesting. It would be interesting to have some salmon and maybe fish them if we're allowed to.
Well, that's right, because I don't know if you've been down to, in the centre of Sheffield, the main bridge on the Don is called Ladies Bridge.
Yeah.
And I just look forward to it. I just would love to be able to stand on that bridge and look down and see masses of salmon swimming. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be super interesting.
Yeah, it'd be very, very nice, yeah.
Okay. Going back to the questions, so what interests you so much about the Don in particular? Why did you decide to make this documentary about the Don?
Well, I think really because it's my home river.
Yeah.
And because of those things, because it is its history is very interesting, because it's not, in a sense, it's not just a river. It actually, for probably the last 300-400 years, and actually going even further back, it's been a power source. So back in the Middle Ages, it was used to power corn mills, for grinding corn. And then later on, when people started working metal in Sheffield and around about, it became the power source for those things. And Sheffield's knife-making history goes back to the sort of 12th, 13th century. It's very, very old. And of course, it wasn't just the Don that had the weirs and the dams on, all the River Sheaf and the Porter and the Riven and the Loxley, the other rivers of Sheffield, were also used for industry. And I thought, well, that's a very interesting kind of thing, because it gives you a lot of history, it gives you a lot of the background to why Sheffield became the steel and tool cutlery capital of the world, really, and why it's still, if you say Sheffield to most people around the world, they know, steel. It's become, that's the synonymous with steel, really. Yeah. And I thought, well, that could make a very interesting documentary.
Great, that sounds great. Like, my dad actually, when I say Sheffield to him, he's not from here, but he's like, oh, steel.
Yeah.
So, it's really renowned for steel.
Yeah, it is, yes.
So, is it true that it was the dirtiest river once before?
Well, it was, because the downside of being an industrial river, of course, is that people dump things in it. And back in the 18th and 19th centuries, nobody cared about the water.
Yeah.
To them, to the people who had factories and steel mills, it was a very convenient way of getting rid of all the waste.
Yeah.
So they just threw it in the river. So you had all the pollution from the rivers. You had, there was a slaughterhouse in the centre of Sheffield, and they used to dump the blood from the slaughterhouse in the river. And there was also, if you don't come from Sheffield, there's the area in front of the City Hall in Sheffield, as you probably know, is called Barker's Pool. Well, it's called Barker's Pool because that used to be a reservoir full of water. And its purpose was they opened it once a month, and the water poured out down the hill through the centre of Sheffield, washing all the refuse away. And all that refuse, of course, ended up in the River Don. So it became very, very dirty, really pretty almost lifeless, really. It was so dirty there was nothing in it at all in terms of fish or invertebrates or any kind of herons and kingfishers that you see all the time now. So it was really purely down to the industry dumping stuff in the river that turned it into the dirtiest river in Europe.
That's so interesting. No, I think that's... Oh, I had no idea about what was it? The something pool.
Barker's Pool, yeah. So Barker's Pool is, it's one of the big, it's the sort of plaza, if you want to call it, the square between John Lewis and the City Hall. And there used to be a reservoir there.
I would never imagine that there's a reservoir there.
Yeah, before the city expanded, obviously, it was back in the 19th century. But.
Oh, okay. No, that's so interesting. So why the shift from being writing your novels and now making this documentary? Like, what caused that shift for you? Like, that you had to do this documentary?
Well, I kind of wanted to do something else. I mean, the trouble with writing novels is that you're in full control of what happens because it's basically all your work. But it's quite isolated, quite a solitary way of life. So, I have spent a lot of years sitting in a room kind of writing stuff and revising and editing and all that sort of thing. I just felt it was time to get out, get out of my office,
and try something
go and do something, and actually learn some new skills. So I did start off my working career as a journalist, so I'm okay on that kind of asking questions, planning, and working out that sort of aspect of it. But technically, I knew nothing, so I basically got a crash course in how to use an HD camera and how to use a radio mic, and because a lot of the documentary involved me going out and talking to people. So I went out, so I shot some of it myself. There are bits when I'm on camera when I hired a cameraman to film those bits. Yeah. But it was just a great way of just doing something a little bit different, really, from writing books.
Okay, wow. What else? What do you hope your viewers will get from watching this tomorrow?
Well, I hope, I mean, obviously, first thing, I hope they'll enjoy it.
Yeah.
I hope they will, most of them will be from around this area.
Yeah.
So, but one of the things I was surprised about is that, you can live here for a long time and not know that much about the rivers here, Yeah. So I hope that it will be informative. I hope they'll find out things that they didn't know. And I hope that the kind of places I've stopped, the things I've filmed, the people I've interviewed will be of interest to them. They've got some great things to say. I've spoken to people from the Environment Agency, from something called the River Stewardship Company, from the Don Catchment River Trust, so we're all involved in the cleanup.
Yeah.
But there are also people who are involved in things like restoring this place called Wortley Top Forge, which is an old iron forge further up the river. I've got an interview with a 91-year-old knife maker, who's probably the oldest knife maker in the world, who works at Kelham Island.
94.
I went down the Don. He's 91.
Oh, 91.
Actually, he'll be 92 now. It's called Stan Shaw, wonderful old guy. He makes these knives. You wouldn't believe the knives. They cost £2,000.
Like, he makes them himself?
He makes them himself in a workshop.
I didn't know people still do that.
Well, there aren't many, but he's one of the last hand makers of knives. Yeah.
Wow.
And I went down. There's one, the Don. Sections of the Don further down beyond Sheffield, beyond Rotherham, were canalised to make for industrial barges because the Don really wasn't big and it was too shallow for them. So sections of it have been turned into canal. But there's only one commercial vessel that's still left. There used to be hundreds going up and down the Don. There's only one left now, which is like an oil tanker that comes up from Hull to Rotherham. And I went down the canalised sections of the Don with the two guys who run the barge. And that was fascinating because you see a lot of wildlife, you see a lot of things you can't see from the bank because they're not accessible. And it was an interesting point these guys were making about climate change and about how we're constantly being told we have to cut down on emissions. And so their point is, well, why don't we use our canals more? Because they have this tank, it's a very big boat that carries 460,000 litres of oil, whereas a road tanker only carries 30,000. So you need a lot of road tankers to carry the same amount of oil. And so they say, well, why aren't we putting more things, more freight on the canals? And then it will cut down on emissions, cut down on greenhouse gases and all those things. So that was fascinating, going down the river with these guys.
Yeah.
And then I went all the way down, because the mouth of the Don, it doesn't go straight into the sea, it goes into the River Ouse at Goole.
Yeah.
And I went down there, and Goole is an inland port, and that's a very, very interesting place too. So, I mean, every section of the Don is interesting. Actually, in fact, one of the most interesting bits at the moment, because of what people are seeing on the news, I'm sure you're aware, there's a village called Fishlake,
Yeah.
which is near Doncaster, which has been inundated by the Don. And I filmed there last summer. And when I filmed there, I used a drone for some of the footage, and you can see the River Don is a long, long way. It's probably 100 metres from the village of Fishlake.
Yeah.
And yet you watch the footage on TV now, and the whole village has been flooded. So the Don has flooded so much that it's come all the way across the plain and gone around to the village. So people watching it tomorrow will be thinking, gosh, you know, that's what Fishlake used to look like, and now we've seen it on the news, and it's covered in water.
Is this from the recent flooding?
From the recent flooding? Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean, they're all there. I mean, it's on the news every night this week.
Yeah.
Fishlake is the kind of the big area, the village that has really been hit worst by the floods.
Oh my gosh. Okay, I didn't realize that
Yeah.
the River Don could actually.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, I gave the Don. I gave the documentary the title "Quiet Flows the Don."
Yeah.
Which is
Explain that
slightly
title.
ironic now. Well, I took the title because I felt it was poetic, and also there's some books by a Russian writer called Sholokov, who was writing about the other Don, the River Don in the Ukraine. And it feels a bit kind of, ironic now, because, of course, when I filmed it, the Don actually was very quiet. Last summer, it was very, very shallow. There was a very low water flow because it was a hot, dry summer.
Yeah.
But it just shows how changeable rivers are, that what I saw last summer was this benign, quite gentle river, and now it's turned into this kind of ferocious, this raging torrent, really. And it can just do that, literally overnight, a river.
Okay, I had no idea about that, but that sounds amazing. Okay, the most important question: where can we get tickets for this?
Well, it's on at the Showroom Cinema in Sheffield tomorrow evening, Thursday at 6:00.
Yeah.
And it's 6:00 in the evening, and there's the film's about 90 minutes, and then there's a question and answer with me afterwards. So you kind of get to see the documentary, and then you get to ask a few questions about it if you want to as well.
Okay, great. Okay, lastly, what would you want to tell our viewers? Like, invite them to watch invite them to watch the documentary. How would you phrase it to everyone out there?
Well, I mean, I would just say that I think it's an engaging, informative documentary, and I would just say I hope you enjoy watching it as much as I enjoyed making it.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you.